This episode featured the December 1942 and the January 1943 attack by the U.S. Army on a place called in Mount Austin today. And also we'll talk about the little known fight of Hill 27, and we'll visit that very shortly. So in the background behind me is the actual Mount Austin in the area where the campaign took place. Hope you enjoy. So the Marines and the Army at this stage had the Point Cruise line in November, and they decided there was an enclave of Japanese in a place called Mount Austin. It overlooked the airfield, so that was the airfield. This is Mount Austin here. So ever since the campaign started in August, the Japanese had an observation post, and we know this now because the Japanese Navy lieutenant who actually survived the war and is evacuated here in February '43 had a lookout or observation post up there. So yeah, there, looked over, he could see Henderson Field and Lincoln Point. So it's a great observation post he had. So in December, the 1st Marine Division left. There was elements of the 2nd Marine Division that was starting to come in. The U.S. Army had the 164th Regiment, the 132nd Regiment, and the rest of the Miracle Division had already arrived to replace the Marines. And elements of the 25th Division, U.S. Army was starting to arrive also. So the Army General was Major General Patch, who took command officially from Major General Vandergriff of the Marine Division. So Patch decided that he wanted to eliminate the Japanese here on Mount Austin, so he could resume the offensive from Point Cruz down to Cape Esperance, or the end of the island, to eliminate the Japanese. But this was kind of like a thorn in his side. And also to help him cement his decision, in early December the Japanese did a small raid on the Fighter 1s. That's Henderson, the other airfield of Henderson. So Henderson's in the distance there. See if I can zoom into it. That's Henderson Field. You'll see that green sparse patch there. So slightly to the left of that was Fighter 2 airfield. I've already done an episode on Fighter 2. So Patch decided to send a 132nd Regiment, a National Guard unit. It just freshly landed on the island. Gave them an assignment to eliminate any of the Japanese who are located on Mount Austin. So 17 December, the 3rd Battalion of the 132nd, with the lead battalion under Lieutenant Colonel Wright, advanced up this road here. At the time it was a small jeep track, so it came up. There's Lincoln Point. So basically it's made its way down to the coastal track, which is now the existing road. Cut up a series of ridges in front of me here, and came up this road. It was a small jeep track at the time, and it went up to Hill 35. So that's the Japanese memorial nowadays, but at the time of the battle it's called Hill 35. So that was the end point for the jeep track. So walking toward Hill 35 now, during the actual time of the whole campaign for Mount Austin, this was the clearing station, also served as a battalion, later regimental command post. This is kind of the end of the line for the jeep track, because in the initial elements of this battle, I think the first 2 weeks, the jeep track ended here, and then it went into a normal trail that went up to Mount Austin. And I've got some photos of the trail, and it had to be porters from the Solomon Islanders were carrying all the boxes, and actually called them the Cannibal Battalion at the time. So Solomon Island porters and the U.S. Army troops would basically move down into just a single footpath or trail. Basically, it follows roughly where the road is now, but it went in that little knoll in front of me there. went up and over that knoll and straight up on Hill 30 there on the top of Mount Austin. So on the 17th of December, the 3rd Battalion of the 132nd Regiment advanced up this track. The U.S. intelligence didn't really know how many Japanese were up here. They thought it would be some remnants of the units that actually had fought quite hard, and it'd just be maybe a company or two on top of the hill. So the 3rd Battalion basically went in a reconnaissance of force, led by Wright, to find out what was on top of this hill. In reality, what the Japanese had on top of that hill, actually on the plateau, you wouldn't be able to see it in this photo, or sorry, this footage I'll show you when we drive to the top of the actual range. So once you reach to the top there, the Japanese had in a horseshoe-shaped perimeter, basically 1,500 yards long. They had 45 interconnected and mutually supported coconut log pillboxes, roughly about 500 men. I think the elements of the 124th and 228th regiments. Well, the 124th had been here, I think, since September, so they're pretty well shot. But the 228 had just landed and had set in, so they were fairly fresh troops. So the U.S. Army is advancing up in reconnaissance force, thinking they're going to hit a few stragglers, but they're going to run into probably the most defensive, hardest defensive position on Guadalcanal. Very tough nut to crack for a fresh green National Guard unit. So we're looking northeast again. There's a Japanese memorial in the distance. Hill 35, where we were just at. So the 132nd, 3rd Battalion, 132nd moved from there, moved up over this hill I'm standing over with now. And they advanced on a small track. Now that road in front of me, you'll see there, I don't know if that follows the original track and later expanded to a Jeep trail. I've got photos that shows a trail going up a spine, so it might be that ridge spine there, and then they were bivouacked on the first slopes. The lead companies moved up. The Japanese are on the flat up there, so they didn't experience any opposition until they reached that thick jungle. And each one of those camouflage bunker, or each one of those pillboxes were heavily camouflaged. And you read the accounts of the soldiers that were 2 or 3 feet away. When they opened up on them, they couldn't spot them. So lead companies moved up and then encountered Japanese resistance on the top of that ridge, and we'll drive up there in a second. They pulled back, and then the Lieutenant Colonel Wright, the battalion commander, moved up with a small party with a FART observer and a few other guys to find out what was going on. He ran into a Japanese machine gun, which shot him and mortally wounded him. They couldn't get his body out, so they withdrew and reconsolidated. To this day, the road we just, I just drove up on, not you guys, and you probably wish you did, but it's called Wright Road in honor of the Lieutenant Colonel Wright who died trying to take this position in initial days. This is where the track ends on top of the plains, on top of Mount Austin. So pan around, this flat area is the beginning of the Gifu, and they named it the Gifu because it was the area in Japan where most of these troops came from. You can see the Barana village, Hill 27 memorial site. I think the Australian government bought this. So they're doing a good job here. They refurbishing it. So what you see, this large star is called the Gifu Star. It's one of the rare memorials still left on Guadalcanal. The plaque hadn't been stolen, so the locals here have protected it. So this was set up in 1991 for the 50th anniversary, so it's the final destruction of organized Japanese forces. 10 January to 6 February, so that was the mopping up of the Gifu, and I'll talk about that a bit later, where they came in and wiped it out by the 35th Regiment. So I've got a still shot of what that says on the photo. This was the original road into the Gifu. Now it's closed up, but the locals said years ago this is the original road. So the tank attack would occur. The one Marine tank with the Army crewmen came down this track. This is basically the beginning of the Gifu. So we go to the left, it drops straight off, and that's facing the west. So the Japanese would have started their pillbox line directly in front of us and went into a horseshoe shape, covering the neck. So another 300 or 400 meters out is Hill 31. That was for basically 2 weeks, or sorry, about 3 weeks. The Americans had their line there, and there was no man's land in front of us. So this ended the first phase of the Battle of Gifu, Mount Austin. So the U.S. Army was facing the Japanese in a stalemate for 3 weeks and waiting for reinforcements.